Alright, so in this lesson we're going to create our own acid lines using Serum VST, but if you don't have Serum, that's okay, because you can follow along on most VSTs as long as they've got these few settings that we're going to be using, which I'll explain next. It's surprisingly easy to make these sort of sounds, so once you've learned this technique you can apply it to various synthesizers. Okay, so the three main things that we're going to be playing with here, the three main settings that we need to make this sound, is the basic saw wave, which you can get on most VSTs, length, spire and all those. Then we need distortion, which you can either use the built-in VST's distortion or your own plugins. And then we need the filter to automate the sound and modulate it. Alright, so the first thing we need to do is go and grab the first 4 bass notes from our bass line, copy them, open up Serum, and then paste them on the piano roll. So the next thing we're going to do is copy and paste these notes and put them on the octave below and to the left. So this is like what we do when we're making a roll bass. We're going to add a bit more variety by stuttering some of the notes and messing with the octave and the length of the notes. Now we're going to add the acid pattern to the song and just paint it down across this section. And then we're going to get the select tool and make a loop that covers this section so we can just play it on a constant loop when we're listening. Now I'm going to solo the acid track so we can only hear that for now while we're working with it. Now we're ready to start designing the sound, so let's dive into Serum. If we click the drop down arrow and choose detached, then we can detach this window so we can see it more clearly. So the first thing we need is a saw wave. Serum's default sound is already the saw wave, so we're sorted there. And next we need to enable the filter by clicking this little light. Now we're going to crank the resonance right up to around 80. And then we're going to add a little bit of drive and fat. And then we can see what it sounds like so far by moving the cutoff up and down. So now we can start setting up the macros, and these are knobs which we can link to any of the parameters that we're going to be mainly using, and that way we can control them all with these 4 knobs. So it's easy to tweak the settings all in one place. So for example, we could link them to the cutoff, the distortion, detune, anything like that, and then we can easily mess with them all in one place. So to set the macro up, we just need to grab this bit next to the knob and move it over to the parameter that we want to assign it to, and then let go. And then we can see that we get this little blue line around the cutoff, and that's indicating where the lowest and highest points of the macro knob are going to take the settings to. So now we need to decide what we want the minimum and maximum values to be. But before we do that, I'm going to put on some distortion to make the sounds a bit more crunchy, and then that's going to help us determine where the biting point is for where the lowest and highest points should be. So first of all, I'm going to find out where I want it to be at the lowest point. And I'm going to add a little bit more resonance just to make that a little bit crunchier. And then I'm going to turn the macro up to 100%, and then I can find the highest point by using this little blue thing above the knob. Now we can control the filter with the macro. Now I'm going to rename this cutoff so we know what it is. Let's turn the distortion drive up all the way and see what that's like. And then turn the mix all the way down, and then we're going to assign the second macro to the distortion mix. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is add an envelope onto the filter cutoff. So to do that, we just need to drag it over like we did with the macro. So we just get these arrows where it says envelope 2, and then drag them up to the cutoff of the filter, and then turn the amount down to about 10. Now we need to set the envelope settings, so we're going to turn sustain all the way off. We can turn decay down to around 200. Turn release up to about 300. And then we're going to assign macro 3 to the decay. And we can turn the amount down. And this allows us to change from short stabby notes into longer smooth notes. Now I'm going to fine tune the low and high settings for the cutoff macro knob, just to make sure they're exactly where I want them to be. Now I'm going to try moving the MIDI notes up an octave to see if that's any better. So now that that's all set up, I'm going to move on to creating the automation clip. So to do that, I just need to wiggle the cutoff knob, and then I need to go to Tools, Last Tweaked, and create automation clip. And then I can right click to add a new point on the automation. So this is just going to make the cutoff go up and then back down again. Or if you want a more interesting effect, you can just stick a load of random points up and down on the automation just by right clicking. And you can change the snap as well to smaller settings and just go as crazy as you like with this. Now I'm going to get this last part of the pattern and I'm going to make it unique. And in this part we can make a slightly different pattern just to change it up a bit. So this bit's going to be like a fill for at the end of the bar. So I'm going to use some long notes for this instead, because the automation is going to make it sound a bit trippier. So it doesn't matter that they're not short stabby notes, because the automation is going to go up and down. And for this final part, I'm going to go crazy with the automation. I'll zoom right in on small snap settings and I'll just make it go up and down loads. We can move the points around or curve them by dragging. We can try experimenting with different notes on the MIDI. Now I'm going to send this to a mixer track and then we can add a couple of effects on there. I'm going to add a parametric EQ2 to trim off some of the bass and boost the mids a little bit. And then I'm going to add a fruity delay bank to give it a bit of an echo. And then a little trick that I usually use to spice it up a bit is add a fruity panomatic, and then it pans it to the left and right automatically. You can mess with the amount and speed to change how far to the left and right it goes and how fast. Now you can experiment with some different effects plugins. You could add phases, flanges, that sort of thing, or different distortion plugins. So I'm going to add some more distortion, and the only thing you need to be careful of is the order that you put the effects in, because they'll give you a different effect depending on which way they're going through the chain. So once you've made your acid sound and you're happy with it, you can go ahead and save that as a preset, and then next time you want an acid, you can load that up and start from there, and then that's going to cut out all that setting up, and you can just tweak the settings and come up with different sounds.